वक्रतुंड महाकाय सूर्यकोटि समप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा।
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I have pleasure in welcoming you all for the 13th lecture of BI Mumbai Center monthly lecture series. Hope all are you safe and healthy. I especially welcome Sri M.E. Mohan Sir, President of BI. He has joined us all the way from Chennai. He has been great source of support and encouragement to all BI members across India in this pandemic trying time. Sir, I thank you for encouraging Mumbai Center for joining us earlier also and today also. I also welcome Sri Babu Rao Chakravarti, Vice President BI West, who is with us from Nanded, and Sri Bharatwaj, State Chairman BI Maharashtra, who is with us from Dhule. In these challenging times, they and other senior leaders of BI have been taking many steps to solve the problems of the building and construction industry. I wish them the very best. I also welcome and thank today's speaker, Sri Akshit Moral from Juriscorp. He is going to speak on overview of the various juridical precedents of the last year. I once again welcome all the participants who have registered and are attending today. I have to request the participants to send their feedback. Ladies and gentlemen, you all are aware about RERA, which has now been implemented by all the states of India. Maybe bad of couple of states, naturally, whenever such act is in existence, there will be litigation. I will not go into the detail and leave it to the learned speaker to dwell upon the same. I wish you all a very informative evening. Jai Hind, Jai Maharashtra. Now I request President Sir to give his welcome speech.
My dear friends, good evening to all of you. The real estate industry plays a key position in fulfilling the requirements of the country's housing and infrastructure. The spread of COVID-19 and the crisis that arose due to this pandemic had an adverse effect on the real estate and its developers. The contribution to national GDP by the real estate sector is 13%. The real estate sector accounts to the second largest employer in the country and has a direct influence on 250 allied industries. Therefore, it becomes very important that the government should make relaxation on certain regulations to help the business builders to fulfill their responsibilities and obligations. In order to protect the rights of both buyers and sellers and other parties to the transaction and to promote the dissemination of information to the parties, the Real Estate Regulation and Development Act 2016 was implemented with a purpose for controlling and promoting the unregulated real estate market. India's regulatory index scored low due to a lack of proper compliance mechanisms in the real estate market. It also aimed to create a separate adjudicatory process as introduced under the bill to settle conflicts more rapidly between the promoter and the purchaser or the purchaser and the agent. On the other hand, considering that the land is a finite resource compared to the limitless demand of real estate, RERA and subsequently established authorities would play a crucial role in the future. Currently, the evaluation of RERA jurisprudence is taking place at various phases in different states. Each authority has different views on the same subject matter, resulting in an inconsistency in the security of allotee interest in different states. Therefore, while an allotee in the state of Maharashtra can file a complaint with the authority about an unregistered project, an allotee in the state of Punjab is unable to do so. Likewise, though an allotee can obtain a refund in the state of Karnataka if he so chooses, an allotee in the state of Haryana does not. Such a dichotomy of views with regard to the same provisions may negate the intent for which the RERA was enacted. That is, a central law in the interest of effective consumer security, continuity, and standardization of business practices and transactions in the real estate sector. However, there is still a huge scope for improvement in the implementation of the Act, and it needs legislative amendments by consulting stakeholders. I thank Sri Moginder Rijwani ji, Chairman Mumbai Center, for arranging a knowledgeable lecture series on various topics relating to construction and real estate sector with the eminent speakers, and inviting me as chief guest for today's lecture on RERA, an overview of the various judicial precedents of the last year. I hereby conclude my words with best wishes. Please be safe and take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Sir. Now I request Jaiprakash Bhatia to introduce the speaker.
Mr. Akshit Mora, Equity Partner, Juris Corp. Akshit lies in conveyancing, real estate financing, joint venture, merger and acquisition, consumer protection law, succession planning, inbound investment, structured transaction involving complex onshore and offshore structuring, private equity transaction and other business commercial laws. He has extensive experience in drafting and negotiation of various commercial contracts agreements, advising on inward investments as well as succession planning or various high net individuals on issues pertaining to personal law and inheritance. Over the years, Abhishek has successfully led several high-value merger and acquisition for domestic and offshore clients across various segments, including real estate, insurance, and education sectors. He has acted as transaction lawyer for several real estate funds for their investment in construction-related activities. Abhishek has often appeared before various courts in arbitration proceedings for developers, contractors, corporate and institute clients on disputes pertaining to real estate, construction contracts, and other commercial contracts. He is also involved in advising several clients on pre-litigation disputes, strategy for ensuring preparedness and effective management of entire litigation process to achieve quick resolution of the dispute, keeping in mind the interest of the client. Its corporate advisory work mainly comprises of deal structuring, negotiation, documentation, execution of transactions. It works closely with clients in the conceptual, negotiation, and closing of contract and commercial transaction. He has worked with his clients for increasing the reach of the advice, knowledge by using technology and presenting in the simpler manner to everyone to understand. He is well regarded by clients for his pragmatic approach and for his exceptional service-oriented attitude. He has successfully represented several corporates at various forums for multiple proceedings across India. He has helped Invest India and issues relating to stamp duty and registration and simplifying the procedure and timelines for updating revenue records in Mumbai. Invest India is a joint venture company, not for any profit-making company, between Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion. It's called DIPP, Ministry of Commerce and Industries, Government of India, Federation of India Chambers of Commerce and Industry, FICCI, and various state governments. He is approached by World Bank on regular basis for his expert comments on investment in India. Bhavishyath has also been invited for various media forums to share his views on RERA, legal queries, project delays, redevelopment rules, and other related issues.
Thank you, Jayaprakash Bhatia ji. Now I request Avik ji to give the presentation.
Sure, thank you so much. So I'll quickly start. Just one request, Darshi, can you put up the presentation for everyone to see? It will become easier. Okay, thank you. So as the topic suggests, I'm trying to summarize for all of you some of the key judicial precedents of this or the previous year that has happened, and it's basically a simplification of things that has happened. I understand that so many judicial precedents put together is a very heavy topic, so that's why I've tried to use the medium of presentation so that it becomes slightly easier for all of you to digest and understand, and I'll try to keep it as short as possible so that all of you can at least absorb what I'm trying to share with you. So to start off with, I'm just showing you the roadmap here of my presentation of what exactly am I intending to cover in my presentation. Initially, I'll just give you a background and an introduction of why this presentation has been decided or why we wanted to share this presentation with you. Another important development, which although is not a part of my presentation per se, I'm not going to focus too much on it, but I just wanted to touch upon a few brief points of the new Consumer Protection Act, because that has a very important impact on the real estate industry. In fact, prior to RERA, Consumer Protection Act was the primary authority who used to look into consumer disputes and developer disputes. Thereafter, I would do a quick comparison for all of you between Consumer Protection Act and RERA vis-a-vis what are the court's view on both the acts. I will also update you briefly on some important case laws relating to real estate under the IB code. Not much, it's just one important case law, but I thought you should all know. Then basically I would move on to the RERA part, where I would deal with a few important judgments under various RERA courts. And lastly, just to help people understand, I've just created a couple of case scenarios, which is actually keeping in mind some of the practical experiences that we've gained, some of the matters that we've handled. And we just thought it will be interesting for you to know, some of the nitty-gritties of these matters from an interesting, point of view. So with that, let me start, because there's lots to cover. I want to keep it very brief. So the introduction part. So why do we feel that this is a crucial time for all of you to know what I'm trying to share with you? Now, like the learned gentleman before me, all the speakers before me were mentioning that RERA actually started 3 years back, and it's been some years since some states have already implemented it. Maharashtra was a leader, but some states were slightly slow. And as correctly pointed out by the learned speaker at that time, that this is a central act. The intention of this act was to actually have a unified form of legal system, but unfortunately, that's not how it appears right now. But interestingly, what has happened is most of these RERA orders and disputes that were passed quite a few of them are now getting challenged in the High Court, and we are seeing new precedents being set by the High Court. So it's in a way reaching finality. These orders, which originally were passed by an authority or a tribunal, is now being adjudicated by a higher authority, which is in a way reaching finality. And an order passed by one High Court, till the time there is a contrary order by a different High Court, will be actually applicable to the other tribunals also. So from that perspective, I thought it will be interesting for all of you to know of this. Sorry, I end up going to the wrong slide every time. Just give me a second. I'm sorry, I'm just not able to change the slides. Finally, okay. So this is quite self-explanatory. I don't want to waste too much of time on this slide, but this was just to brief all of you on some of the extensions that were granted on account of COVID. Again, as you can see, the timelines are different, although it's a central bank, but different. RERA authorities have decided to give different extensions. This was automatic extensions that were granted to all existing approvals that were in place. So most of them, which were for 6 months, have already expired because this was with effect from 15 March. So let's move on. Okay, now this is the first interesting one that I wanted to share with you. This is not a very recent case law. This was August 2019. And before that, as you all are aware, in July of 2020, this year, the new Consumer Protection Act has come into force. Now, I just want to deal with a couple of points from that act, and that's a totally different topic right now, but just so that you all are aware, there is a new definition of product seller that has been added under the new act. And if I read out what the definition is, it includes a host of many others, but it also includes a person who is engaged in the sale of constructed house or in the construction of home or flat. So now what has happened, because of this addition of the new definition, product seller is going to be cross-referring to a new concept under the Consumer Protection Act, which is referring to product liability. And most of your penalties are going to be determined on the basis of product liability. So I'm just kind of getting you aware. If I'm sure most of you are aware of this, but just in case, the Consumer Protection Act has now added a new angle altogether as far as liability is concerned. Now, there is also something regarding the remedies that are available while we are dealing with that on a subsequent slide. So I'll just quickly move on. Now, this is an interesting part, unfair contract. While RERA uses the word unfair contract in details, but consumer contract, or rather the new Consumer Act, has actually gone ahead and defined unfair contract. Now, you all must be aware, in 2010-11, there was a lot of inquiry that was done by the Competition Commission of India with regards unfair contract, where they had actually taken cognizance of a lot of these contract format that were being used. And they specifically felt that the contract format being used by the real estate industry was very one-sided. So they have taken a leaf out of that, and now they've actually inculcated this definition of unfair contract specifically even under the Consumer Protection Act, in addition to RERA. Unfair Contract Act, this is not an exact replica of the definition, but in sum and substance, this is what it means. Basically, it says that if you have any of these elements, that it will be deemed to be an unfair contract. Now, what would that be? Now, if it demands an excessive security deposit from the other side, so then it may be unfair contract. If you are disproportionately penalizing a consumer, then it may be deemed as an unfair contract. Non-acceptance of early repayment of debt, that's not probably very relevant from us here. Then, assignment on terms and conditions which are not very right. Unilateral termination of a contract without reasonable clause. So this becomes very crucial for us. There may be instances where we may have such clauses in sale agreements. So this is something that we have to be mindful of, so that it is not deemed as unfair contract. And imposing unreasonable charges. Now, what is the fallout of having something or being declared as unfair contract? basically now the Consumer Forum will have the right to declare by itself an agreement null and void if they feel that it is unfair contract. So that in a way may put a developer in a very uncomfortable position. Now this is a very interesting case. This is quite recent, October 2020, just a month back. Now this question was always boiling, and this question actually comes up every time. You must have heard even about general arbitration versus court. You know, that was a boiling question. Now we have this question that can someone approach a consumer court and RERA at the same time? Now it's a very convoluted answer, but if I need to simplify it for everyone, the answer is yes, in its own respects. Now there are a couple of sections in RERA, especially Section 88 under RERA Act, which says that the act was never meant to be exclusive act, and it is in addition to the other rights that are there. So basically, what this case law, what this order actually said, it said that both a person can actually go to both the forums, but at the same time, we have to be very clear that the reliefs that are sought cannot be same. So you cannot ask for the same relief and go before both the forums. Okay. So if I need to just clarify this, let me read the paragraph on the top. So it said the court clarified that if a complainant has to file before the consumer forum, and if a complaint before the consumer forum is withdrawn and presented before the adjudicating authority, the scope of the relief would be limited to the compensation or interest. So, so what they've tried to do is they've tried to bifurcate between the rights between both the authorities. While the consumer forum would or might have a much wider forum, their enforceability ability is also much wider, as we are all aware. But at the same time, it clarified that you can't, seek for the same kind of remedies. But yes, to sum it up for all of you, LOT can seek the benefits under both the Act and simultaneously file proceedings under both Acts. There is a further part also about the rights of the authority and the OA. I am dealing with it separately later on, so I'm not going to waste time here of all of you. Now, interestingly, under IBC, I am sure this must be also of interest to all of you, that what is the status of a LOT under IBC. Now, initially what had happened, there was an amendment. Under that amendment, it was held that a LOT is a financial creditor. Now, on account of this amendment, the number of proceedings before the NCLT increased multifold. So subsequently, what happened is the same section where the amendment made a LOT a financial creditor, they made a explanation and an exception there where they said that for you to initiate proceedings against a developer, the minimum number that is required, one is it has to be 100 or 10% of the total number of LOT. So that they created the exception. Now the bigger hue and cry is that because of the COVID situation, there are a lot of amendments that has been proposed under the Bankruptcy Act, including the minimum threshold. So while the original threshold was 1 lakh, now the threshold has been increased to 1 crore. So from a LOT's perspective, now you have 2 layers to cross. One is you have to first either find 100 people to come with you or 10% of the total people to come with you. And secondly, now your claim amount has to be more than 1 crore. So this is an update more from an IBC perspective. Now, this is a case law which is a culmination of RERA and IBC both. It is very interesting. The way NCLAT has given its view on how a LOT can enforce its rights. So just to give you a background, what had happened in this matter, this is a matter of Unsal Properties and Infrastructures Limited. So what had happened is this LOT had actually sought or approached a developer for a project in Lucknow, and the timelines that were supposed to be met actually were not met. Eventually, they approached the UP RERA. They got an order in their favor, a favorable order in their favor. However, they were not able to recover the order or recover the money as per the order. So what they did is they again approached RERA and they obtained a recovery certificate. So that's the first part. So I have a particular money due. I get a go to RERA, get an order. RERA says, yes, this is the money that should be refunded to the LOT. The money was not given to me. So I go and get a recovery certificate from RERA. Now what they do, these home buyers, they actually say that since I'm a degree holder, and the definition of financial creditor actually includes a degree holder. So they actually use that degree and file proceedings against a developer under the IB code as a financial creditor. And they say that I'm a financial creditor, this money has to be returned to me, otherwise you have to start the entire CIRP process. So while NCLT, which is the original tribunal, they agreed to this view, but NCLT took a very strong reverse view. What NCLT said is, look, this is not a view that can be taken. Now, two important points that I wanted to share with you. One, what NCLT said is, once you have obtained a degree, you are no longer a LOT. You cease to be a LOT. So then the benefit that was there to you because of the amendment is gone. Subsequently, what it says is, yes, you are a creditor of the company, but you are not a financial creditor. A degree holder, a degree holder cannot be deemed to be a financial creditor of the company. So with this, they actually dismissed the application that was filed, or rather the appeal that was filed. So the summary is that anyone who has a degree from RERA and wants to use that degree as against initiating IB code proceedings against a developer, because of the way this order is of NCLT, at least presently, that will not be possible. Now, a very simple example of how, in certain cases, the order that has been, or rather the orders that are being passed now by RERA are getting more stringent by the day. So this is regarding Haryana RERA. It's a very short order. But the reason why I wanted to bring this order before all of you was because of the last paragraph. If you see the last paragraph of my slide, it basically said, so there was a delay in completion. So Haryana RERA gave them a period of 2 months. It says that immediately within a period of 2 months, that is from 1st Feb to 1st April, finish the project. Any further delay will result in penalizing of the developer on a rate of 1 crore rupees per day. That's a lot of money. Now, that is the extent to which they have actually now started levying penalties. Now, this is an order which was passed in January 2020. Now, this is again another, a slightly complicated order where the way the order is, what it says is that if I am a LOT, I sold a unit to a subsequent person, they are not entitled to interest. While I have my own personal view on this, but what I would do is share with you what actually had happened. So in this case, what had happened is the actual or the original LOT who had purchased the flat actually sold it to a second person. On the day when the second person bought the flat, the period for the delivery or the timeline for delivery of the project was already over by then. So subsequently, after he bought the flat, then he approached RERA seeking for compensation for the delay. Now, this is MahaRERA. So what MahaRERA said is, you bought the flat with the knowledge that there was already a lapse of time. That's why you are not entitled to any interest. This is how the view is that has been taken by RERA, but I would not take this view as absolute, because if you see or if you remember, the definition of LOT itself includes any subsequent purchaser. So this, I feel that if it gets challenged, maybe set aside. But as of now, this is how the law that has been set up. Now, this is a very touchy topic, especially I remember there is a lot of orders that has been passed, and there are a lot of contrary orders that have been passed. In fact, I personally have argued matters before MahaRERA on this point. And, the issue is that if I don't have an agreement for sale, am I entitled to the benefits that are there? Because quite a few of the terms and conditions, or rather the language that has been used in the RERA Act actually says that a developer is supposed to comply with the terms and conditions of the agreement for sale, or the interest as payable under the agreement for sale. So initially what had happened is, the view that has been taken is that if you don't have an agreement for sale, then you are not entitled to those kind of reliefs. Now, this in the matter of Tata Housing Development Company, now this actually has been, in a way put to rest, where the view that has been taken is that in absence of agreement for sale, any other document that are there, which is evidencing any kind of timelines for handing over possession and whatever are there, has to be taken into account, and that has to be deemed as evidence of the date on which the possession was being given. So there is not too much about this case law, but what we need to remember is now agreement for sale is not the only document which will be looked upon, and even if there are any other ancillary document, be it allotment letter or any other ancillary proof that can be provided by the allottee, which appears to be admitted by both the parties, it will be taken or rather it will be taken on record as the actual date. I hope I'm not going very fast. I'm just trying to keep it very simple for all of you. While these case laws have a lot of facts, I'm just trying to keep it to the basics so that you all remember the basics of it. So now, force majeure is a very interesting order. I really like the way in which Maharera had passed this order. Rather, actually, it was the appellate tribunal who had passed this order. Now, what had happened is there was a delay. It was a clear case of delay. 2017 was the date, and they could not actually hand over the possession by 2017. So the actual reason which was attributable to this delay was actually the delay in the obtaining of the NOC from the pollution department. And it was a very pragmatic view that was taken by the appellate tribunal here in Maharashtra, where they said that what you need to establish or ascertain is this delay purely attributable to the developer, or are there certain external factors which actually resulted in the delay? And here they actually took a view that, look, if there are certain factors which evidently is beyond the control of the developer, and he has put in all that is required at his end to ensure that that document or that approval is forthcoming, but yet it doesn't come through, then they said that you cannot penalize a developer in such a situation. You should not rather penalize the developer in such a situation. And the next page of this slide, I think okay. So if you read the 3 bullet points that I have made, it's very interesting. So what the appellate tribunal said, that as an observation, that a developer should not face hardships all the time. Okay. Secondly, the developer should not be discouraged from launching a new real estate project, and the developer should not be thrown out of the project. So these were overall observations of the court. So what they were trying to say is that it has to be fair. Basically, I remember at the beginning of today's session, when we were saying why the RERA Act was enacted, the most important thing that we need to remember, the first line of the preamble is for the betterment of the real estate sector. Protection of the home buyer comes later on, but the first requirement of RERA is to ensure that the real estate sector grows. So which means that you not only protect the interest of the home buyers, but also take care of the interest of the developers. So moving on. Now, this, I don't know if you all have noticed, but this order is now all over the newspapers. This has come very recently, and this is creating a lot of anxiety, especially amongst home buyers, because of this order that has been passed by the appellate tribunal. Now, it specifically deals with the jurisdiction of an adjudicating officer. Now, just for the benefit, I am sure all of you are well aware of the terms that I'm using, but just for the benefit of even that one person who is not aware of it, I want to set this out. That under the RERA Act, there are 2 different bodies. One is the adjudicating officer and the other is the RERA authority. Now, RERA authority has a wide sense of power, while the adjudicating officer has certain powers under section 71, where it is allowed to calculate, or rather calculate may not be the correct word, but it is allowed to look into the quantum of payment that has to be made if there are any breaches under section 12, 14, 18, and 19. Now, what are 12, 14, 18, 19? the summary is that it basically 12 is misrepresentation or wrongful advertisement that is created. Then, it also includes 14, 18, 19. It also includes timelines within which the the delivery is to be made, or if there is a change on of the plan, the sanction plan. If you want to change those section plan, then you have to take the consent. There are those provisions. So these are there. So what basically 71 says that if on account of any breach by the developer under those sections that happens, then whatever is the amount that is to be payable has to be adjudicated by the adjudicating officer. Now, this is the same issue that has arisen here. Now, what has happened is, especially in MahaRERA, the matters are getting assigned by itself. So it's actually, you file it there on the online process and the matter gets assigned by itself to the person who will be sharing this. So now, effectively, the adjudicating officer was actually hearing matters which were not only limited to adjudication of the amount payable under those sections, but it was actually hearing the entire matter, including where the entire principal amount that was paid, that was the actual amount that was paid for the purchase of the flat, was also being heard by them. And they had actually passed orders where they were allowing such amounts to be refunded back to the home buyer. Now, this actually resulted in a lot of developers filing an appeal, specifically keeping in mind the provisions of Section 71. So if you remember, I was reading an order right at the beginning, which was that Haryana High Court order, which was talking about the rights of IBC versus, which was talking about RERA versus Consumer Forum. So there, actually, they had taken this point up. And now, when the Appellate Tribunal of Maharashtra heard this matter, they actually relied on that order. Now, to sum it up for all of you, while it is quite complicated, but the view that has been taken here is that going forward, the adjudicating officer will only have limited rights to adjudicate on issues on any compensation that is payable for the breach of these sections. If there is a wrongful advertisement, if there is compensation to be payable, then the adjudicating officer will have the right to adjudicate on the amount that needs to be paid. They have appreciated the fact that the RERA authority, which is the bench, the RERA authority actually has wide powers to hear all other matters. Every issue relating to RERA will be heard by them, and the AO now going forward will be only deciding on the quantum. So that's the sum and substance of this order. It's a very long order, but I've just kind of summarized everything for you here to make it simple. Now we're just coming towards the end. I wanted to keep it short, so I'm just giving a couple of scenarios here for all of you, and these are more from experience that we had. So what has happened is, let's read out the case scenario for all of you. So ABC Private Limited is a developer building row houses. Then Mr. X is a allottee who booked a row house in the project of ABC Private Limited. Mr. X was promised possession in 2014. Mr. X had paid over 80% of the booking amount to ABC Private Limited. ABC Private Limited did not share the copy of the draft agreement and unilaterally changed the date of possession on the website of MahaRERA. ABC could not, or rather ABC Private Limited could not hand over the possession within the stipulated time period, as a result of which Mr. X filed a complaint before MahaRERA. Now, this is a unique situation. The situation is I today don't have a document in my hand. The registration details on the website actually suggest a day which is yet to come, the possession day. Then the question that arose, and in fact, this matter actually was also covered a lot in the newspapers because this was unique. Now, what the authority here held, that non-availability of document at different levels cannot be the reason for you denying him any relief. That's one. Now, the interesting point was, which is actually not getting covered here, is that the defense that has been taken by the developer was that the delay was on account of sales in the project having gone down. And the reason for which the sale has gone down was that my project is located in a particular area in Maharashtra, which is facing a lot of earthquakes in the last 2 to 3 years. And because of which my project has gone down, my cash flows have gone down, because of which I am not able to complete the project. Now, this defense that was taken by the developer was not accepted. by the authority, and they gave them, or rather they passed an order for giving enough compensation, refund of the money together with interest. So this was the first case scenario. The other was an equally interesting case scenario in a matter that we had only done. Now, if you read here, the facts itself will give out the matter. It's very interesting. So what had happened is there was a scheme that was introduced by a developer. The scheme stated that buy in 2018, live in 2019, and pay in 2020. The said scheme was valid till February 14, 2018. The date of possession that was displayed on the RERA website was 38 September 2020. Okay, so just remember the first paragraph, it's very interesting. Then there is a allottee who books a flat in the project in June 2018. The draft agreement for sale was shared with the allottee, which mentioned the date of possession as September 2020. Then there was a lot of heated negotiations between both the parties, between my client who was the developer and the other side. And eventually they could not sign the document, and this home buyer approached RERA. Now, the interesting part and the reason which actually made RERA give an order in favor of the developer was, if you read the first paragraph, it said, buy in 2018, live in 2019. So the home buyer said that according to the advertise, I was supposed to get possession in 2019. Then the interesting part was, our advertisement clearly said that the scheme was valid till 14 February 2018. Okay. Now, if you see the latter part, the second paragraph, it said that the project was booked in June 2018. So this was the first point in which we were able to convince the authority that, look, he had nothing to do with the advertise. He had bought it much later than the advertise. The second interesting part was the agreement, while it was never executed between the parties, but a draft agreement that was sent to them and a draft which was sent back by them, which had a lot of changes on track, which I'm sure some of you will be knowing, when you make changes, you can see it in track. This clause, which had September 2020 written on it, was left as it is. They did not make any change. While they were later on claiming that it was 30th September 2019, but the draft sent by the lawyer actually had September 2020 written on it. So when we were able to produce a copy of that document showing that, look, this was the mail by which this document was forwarded, where the date was written as September 2020, which they did not change, eventually the authority was convinced that, yes, what we are saying is correct, and the possession date is September 2020. So this matter actually happened in January. So eventually they took the view that since that is the case, now your application is premature. You come back in September 2020 if the possession is not handled. So that's about it. I tried to keep it very strong, small, because there are a lot of issues. So I didn't want to overflood people here. So if there are questions, I'll be happy to take it later on, as in whatever you have as per the flow of the program. Thank you.
Yeah, Chairman, sir.
Yes.
Participants, if you have any queries, please raise your hands using the facility in the app. I think, Chairman, sir, you take over.
Anyone has questions, kindly raise your hand, please.
Can you stop the sharing, Mr. Darshi Madam? Thank you.
Anyone wants to ask a question?
I think you request the guest of honors to speak.
Yes.
In the meantime, people can decide on the questions and they can raise their hands using the facility in the app. Then we'll take them in spotlight. There are no questions in the chat.
I request Babula Chakravarti to give his remarks.
Chakravarti sir, can you unmute yourself? I am audible, no, Chairman sir?
Yeah, clean and clear.
Chakravarti sir, can you unmute yourself? Oh, I think he's not there. He's there.
I am there. Madhu, I am there.
Tell me. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Good evening, friends. I am always very, very happy to be a part of BI Mumbai Center's monthly lecture series. And today is not different. I am with them. It is really very appreciable of Mumbai Center to have kept this series going on and spreading knowledge to all our BIM members throughout India. Today we heard from our today's speaker, Mr. Avikshit Ji, the various judicial orders concerning disputes involving RERA, and I am sure that it will be very useful to all our members. The real estate bill was introduced in the Rajya Sabha in 2013. The aforesaid bill was passed in the Rajya Sabha on March 10th, 2016, and same was passed in Lok Sabha on March 15, 2016. The Real Estate Act 2016 fully came into force on 1st May 2017. Before the enactment of RERA, the real estate sector in India was majorly unregulated, except for the Consumer Protection Act 1986. No recourse the law was available to the real estate buyers. RERA envisages effective consumer protection, uniformity, and standardization of business practices and transactions in the real estate sector. It aims at providing transparency and protecting the interests of consumers in the real estate sector. Further, it intends to ensure great accountability towards consumers and significantly reduce frauds, delays, and high transactions costs. Today, our Honorable President, Sri M.U. Mohan Sir, in his opening remarks, shared some important thoughts. BI is committed to RERA, and our centers across India have taken many steps to help the government smoothly implement it. Today's key speaker, Mr. Avikshit Ji, has given very, very important information in this lecture. I thank Mumbai Center for inviting me here and giving me opportunity to share my thoughts with you all. My best wishes to BI Mumbai Center and the team behind organizing of these events, led by Shri Mohinder Ji Rijwani, a very active chairman of Mumbai Center. Regards to all. Please take care, stay safe. Jai Hind, Jai Maharashtra. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chakravarti. Mr. Anand Gupta raised hand. Madhu, kindly unmute him.
Yeah, I unmuted him.
Hello.
Yeah. Bole Gupta ji.
Can I speak? Sir, thank you very much for such a nice presentation. I just wanted to know, see, ultimately this RERA is a central act. And in spite of that, different states are passing different kind of rules to implement it. If the rule is differing from the act, will it pass the test of law? Ultimately, people will definitely take advantage of whatever is provided in the act. So what are your views on that?
So, this question comes up all the time because there was a lot of criticism of quite a few states because they were said that they have diluted that. Now, the way law functions is the rules will not be able to override the act. The rules are actually made because the act provides for somewhere that the rules have to be made. So if tomorrow there is a challenge that is made that this rule is ultra-wise of the act, it will actually be set off. So to answer you in a very simple way, yes, the rules will not override the powers of the Act. It can't.
So in continuation with this, see, some of the states have allowed that ongoing projects will not be part of RERA. So will it not be violating the Act?
Of course it will be. It will be. But sir, the point is that this issue was very significant when the Act was brought into force. You know, where they had given the 3 months period where they said that ongoing projects also beyond a particular point will have to register. And quite a few states, if I remember correctly, UP had made some concessions. They said that you don't, if you have completed 60% of the project, you don't have to register yourself. So those kind of amendments were made, but nobody at that time challenged it. And now that particular point is over, technically, that issue will no longer be relevant because now every new project that is coming up now has to be registered that way.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Madhu, kindly unmute Jayaprakash ji. You want to ask a question?
Acha.
Jayaprakash ji, boliye.
RERA is resolving the disputes themselves. How far it is successful and satisfactory according to you?
Sir, to give you, I have 2 parts to this answer. RERA is as good in settling disputes as we as stakeholders of RERA want it to be. There are people who use RERA in a particular way. There are people who use RERA in a particular way. People complain even now that cases are not heard very fast in RERA, which is a fact. There are ways of, and I'm talking of perfectly legitimate ways in which a matter can be, heard on a faster platform. That's one. So from a timeline perspective, I'm very happy with the way in which RERA is hearing matters. The technology is very, very simple. You get your mails and everything. The only disappointed point that I have is on the enforcement part. There are so many instances where there are orders, but those orders actually have no value today. There is nothing that a order holder is able to, be it a developer or a home buyer. Like, I have an instance where a developer has got an order of, in a way, coming, to a conclusion and finishing the matter. But if the LOT is not coming and signing a cancellation deed, registering it, there's nothing much that I can do. I'm just sitting with the order.
Are you satisfied?
Is it true that the developers have more influence on the RERA officials? It's unofficial. There are some cases I have seen that they are cleared in 3 to 4 meetings only, and some are prolonged for a longer period.
Sir, if I give you a very honest answer, I don't know whether it will go down very well. But the problem is a developer actually has a systematic legal team who is actually managing the matter well. Most of the cases I've seen, home buyers are actually appearing or going there by themselves, where the RERA authority are helping them. They don't come like this, write this, make an application, likh ke do, aisa karke do. So that's where they get delayed. When we appear for a developer, we are prepared. We prepare everything, service, okay, we are just there for hearing. That is the difference. So you may, a person may feel that developers getting the hearing faster, but that's not the case. I think it's the system. If you do it properly, it happens faster.
Okay, sir.
I would like to also ask a question. Nowadays, you know that Mumbai is under most of the projects are under redevelopment. But RERA is not supporting the old tenants. What is your suggestion? Yeah. They are not, RERA is not giving them this thing. Why? Can you do any suggestion for that?
So, the irony is, and I can give my personal example. So the building in which I stay, I've just shifted recently. So that's a redevelopment building. So the top 8 or 10 floors are new people, and the people who stay below are actually the old tenants. Then the question came up, there was some issue at that time, can we go to RERA? And then the answer was that all the new buyers stood up and said that, like, we are allowed this, we can go. And the tenants were saying that, but we are not getting covered. So just on a funny note, but I really feel that when you're talking of a real estate industry as a whole, if you're looking at the entire ecosystem, then you can't let go of people. You can't say that I will not look into that class or this class, which is not fair. I really don't think that's fair. I feel you have to cover everyone. Because if the tenant's interest is protected, only then the redevelopment will happen faster. Only then the new people will also get their homes faster. So in a way, they are all linked.
You're right. Actually, problem is that civil courts and high courts are taking too long period. That's why they brought this RERA system, so that the system could run fast. But now, because of this tenant and developers fight, everything is stuck up. And I think around last time we had met our RERA chairman. He said around 5,800 projects are stalled. So such a big inventory is stuck up.
So, I really feel two things needs to be done very urgently. One is you cannot differentiate between classes of allottees. And secondly, even authorities who are the approval authorities, even they have to be brought within the parameters of RERA. So that, an order which is passed or some directions can be given even to the authorities saying that you can't delay a project beyond a point. Like today, I'm faced with a situation where the home buyers have taken over the project. The developer is not to be found. But the amount to be paid for buying or regularizing the FSI is so high that the home buyers are not able to do anything about it.
What about the person who in the redevelopment has purchased an extra area? Can he go to RERA?
No. That classification is still not there. I understand your point. You can claim that, look, I have bought 30, 40 square foot extra.
Yeah.
But that classification is not there because his title document will be still the permanent alternate accommodation agreement with the extra area.
Thank you.
Chairman, sir, our Honorable Secretary has raised his hand. Sir.
Yes, sir. Avik J, thank you very much. Very good lecture on judicial precedents.
Welcome, sir.
My question to you is, RERA has come up, RERA particularly, has come up with SRO appointments. Our BI is also one of the SROs. Why such need has come from RERA side? Whether RERA is not able to execute the orders given against builder. It is because of that, because RERA expects from SROs that they should control the builder being the member of their association. Is it so?
So to answer your question very bluntly, if you compare a Consumer Protection Act and a RERA, the only difference is the execution powers that a consumer court has, RERA doesn't have. So that enforcement, the final tooth that is required to enforce an order is something which is missing under RERA, which a consumer court can have. And that's why they have done this partnership, like you mentioned, the SRO actually was a partnership where they're actually putting the obligation now on you to ensure that your members comply with it. But this is purely on account of the way the act is drafted. So that's something that really needs to be amended on an urgent basis. Non-compliance of the order will have to have some sort of penalties or some sort of implications on the party who is not complying with the order.
Have you gone with the agreement with SROs RERA is making?
No, I haven't seen that.
Because in that agreement, RERA expects everything from SROs to control the, particularly to builder.
Compliance,
basically.
Yeah. And my second question to you is, it is a personal one. When a builder approach to you for the particular complaint of the home buyer, or same home buyer comes to you before builder approaching to you, in both you will accept their case, either of home buyer or builder, while contesting how you are dealing with the case by taking side of it.
No, sir. I wouldn't take both the case. I would definitely take the case of the person who approaches me first, or otherwise I will not take it. Either I will not. I'll abstain from the matter. I will not have.
You will not have a choice. You as a advocate will deal that matter, advocate that matter.
Sir, as long as conflict is concerned, I have the right to actually say no. So let me give an example. Suppose you approach me as a home buyer, for instance. Okay, you share your papers with me. We have a meeting. Then subsequently, the same developer also approaches me. So before I even talk to him or start it, so that's how we actually start up on the call. Before we even discuss it, if I get to know that there is a conflict, I am not supposed to discuss the matter further. That's within the legal framework. Now, there are exceptions to everything. I agree. I can see the smile on your face. I can understand why you're doing that smile. There are exceptions, yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Chairman, sir.
Kindly unmute the Swapnil Galgur from Sangli.
Yes, sir.
अच्छा व्हिडिओ बंद ठेवताय का?
सर माझ्याकडे कनेक्शन नाही आहे म्हणून मी व्हिडिओ बंद ठेवतो.
ठीक.
Abhishek ji, thank you very much for allowing me to ask the question. My specific question is related to MahaRERA circular, which is published on 11th of October 2019, circular number 25. The basic premise of that circular is clarification regarding registration of agreement to sell / sale deed for real estate projects. So basically what they have done is, for whatever real estate projects which are excluded from MahaRERA registration. First one, they say that the real estate projects where the area of the land is less than or equal to 500 square meter. Correct. On the second point, they have stated that where the number of apartments proposed to be developed is less than or equal to 8 apartments. So can a builder who is having a land less than 500 square meter, but who has 12 units of apartments exempted from MahaRERA registration? Is the particular question.
So, Swapnil, it's a interesting question. In fact, I remember there is this particular circular that you're referring to. There is one more issue which I just can't remember, but there is a controversy on that circular. Now, the question that you have asked, if I remember correctly, it's not either or. So if you qualify with any one of it, so you're saying that I have a 300 square meter area, but I have 12 units, then you will have to take registration.
Okay. So you meant to say it is not either and or, it is and or. You meant to say.
So it is, you have to qualify or comply with one of the requirements. As in, if one gets ticked, you have to then comply with it.
Okay. So that's why I'm again asking the question. If my apartment units are 7, so do I have to register only because land area is 600 square meter?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry, I couldn't hear the first part of it.
If my proposed apartments are 7 numbers, but my land area is 600 square meters, do I have to register?
You will. Yes, of course you will.
Yes, that was the basic question, because the Parent Act requires both conditions to be satisfied equally. But this circular creates a lot of ambiguity.
Yes, you're right, Swapnil. In fact, I remember 2-3 of my clients have had issues because of this circular. And we have actually spoken to RERA also on this circular. I think on a couple of points, even they don't have clarity.
Okay.
And they had asked us to write officially to them, so which I don't think we have officially. But you're right, there was a lot of ambiguity created by this circular.
So do you want us to, as a BAI, write to MahaRERA and ask the clarification?
So what I suggest is, Swapnil, you should write. What I will do is, there was another issue in this with regards to registration of a project. I don't remember the issue right now. If it is okay, I can share that point also with you. Why don't you write a combined letter which covers both the issues and then make a representation to them?
Sure. Thank you very much.
स्वप्नील साहेब, आपल्याला करायचं आहे.
हो, करायचं. आनंद गुप्तांजींना मी पाठवलंय. So we have to do that.
State chairman साहेबांना पण पाठवा copy.
Yes, I will do that.
But
Okay,
even in on individual basis, one can ask
Yes,
RERA, no?
Yes,
Absolutely,
yes.
you can.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Madhu, anyone more? No one is there.
Nobody, sir. I think we can call it a.
Anirudh Nakwa is there.
Aniruddha?
I request Anirudh Nakwa to give vote of thanks and concluding remarks.
Aniruddha not there, yeah.
Not there, right?
Is to be seen, but now I think he's coming. He's coming. Oh my God. अरे उल्टा का कॅमेरा सरळ करा सर.
नाही बरोबर.
आता बरोबर आहे.
Good evening, friends. We had a very nice lecture from Avikshit ji. I was hearing it, and with a quite elaborate explanation on RERA, and including he has woven all the chains. जैसे माला हम लोग घूमते हैं for UP, Haryana, and he has also given certain case studies regarding how the RERA was implemented and how RERA has taken decisions and resolved the disputes between the clients and the developers.
Anirudh, we like to see you without mask. You are looking very smart. That's why the request.
No, I am into an office of CA. And it is a
okay.
Yeah.
Is it okay?
It is. If CA is corona,
no.
affected with corona, are you? Okay.
So it was indeed a very nice lecture, and we, on behalf of Builders Association of India, Mumbai Center, I firstly thank our president, M.U. Mohan, State Chairman Baburao Shakyawar, all the dignitaries of Builders Association of India from all over India and the state as well. I thank Mohinder Rizwani for keeping a series of lectures which are highly educative and have proven to bring lots of knowledge in various sectors, right from developing construction industry, human power resource, and not least by the last lecture, Law of Attraction by Raj. I again would like to thank the today's speaker, Mr. Avikshit, for a wonderful lecture on RERA. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. We actually Miss Dharshi Shah is there, who has been coordinating with us on behalf of Avikshita. She's there now. So thank you, Dharshi madam, for taking the lead and arranging our this session and being in touch with us. Thank you. Yasha, you are on mute.
You are unmute. You are unmute.
Now I think I'll ask everybody to unmute so that they can share their thoughts.
Sir.
Avishit sir, thank you. You can stay with us. There will be some interaction. This is everybody's on mute. Anybody can unmute themselves.
Yeah, sure.
Sir, see, few of our state members who are real estate players, they are actually continuously after me that we should make a representation that this 500 meter and this limit of 8 this unit should be. Are we well within the framework of under the Act to ask such a thing?
So, sir, one thing that I can tell you that if I can draw a parallel, if you look at the banking industry, the banking industry's representations to the government is so strong. That's why RBI keeps on making changes. Now, unfortunately, the point that you're referring to is actually coming from the main central act, which is a requirement. So to what extent will the state authority or RERA be able to issue a circular? I have my doubts. I rather feel that we should make a representation at the central level that how this is actually not proving to be business friendly, and then see if we can look for our exemption. Okay. While within the Act there is no provision for making any representation, but this is a standard market practice.
Thank you.